So one of the things that we're always considering when we're looking at installing a floor in a new location is what exists for subfloor. What is underneath the flooring material that we're going to be installing? So can you speak to that?
Yes. Usually on the main floor of a single family home in Calgary, you're looking at a wood subfloor.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's plywood, it's the best. OSB works pretty good, but if you can use plywood, that is always the best subfloor. It holds the nail the best, okay? If it's a narrow board that we call strip flooring, 2 1/4, 3 1/4, we can just blind nailed into, because it's tongue and groove, we just hit into the nail, and top of the nail, it goes into the floor on an angle. So when you have wider boards, say they're this wide and you're putting them here, there's nothing kind of holding this down on this side. So we do what's called a glue assist. Right. We use a good, it's called a silane-based adhesive. A couple nice things. It allows the floor to move. It's got a lot of elasticity to it. But it also holds well so that you don't have to worry if the floor moves a little bit, that it gets loose in the tongue and groove and makes some noise and that sort of thing.
You might even feel that sensation.
Well, yeah, you normally don't feel it, but you might hear it. Right. Okay, so we always do a glue assist on top of a plank, underneath a plank floor on a wood subfloor. Okay. What if it's concrete? What if it's in a basement or a condo? Right. That's different. You have to treat it different. I think the best way to install hardwood floor in the basement is a full spread adhesive, okay? So you have to worry about, or think about, moisture. Is there gonna be moisture coming from underneath up the slab, right? Especially on an older home. They might not have the moisture barrier inside the concrete like we do today, okay? Right. So, the adhesives that we use have a built-in moisture barrier, okay? And if used, Bona has a new one out. Can't remember the name of it, sorry, Bona, but they have a new product that I just found out the other day that if you roll this on first and then use their adhesive on top, it's 100% moisture barrier, right? Fantastic. So we like that. You can take a plank hardwood floor and glue it together and float it. If you glue it together, it's one piece, 20, 30 feet wide, and a lot of stress gets put on it. And so you've got these individual boards, but they're all together. So you could even have breakages in between the boards and things. So then what do you do? That's why when you glue it down, there's still individual boards. If we have to, we can still change a board in the middle of that. It is so hard to change a board in the middle of a floating if it's glued together. So we don't like doing that. So we recommend people don't do that.
So you glue the boards to the substrate, the concrete, the treated concrete that has moisture
barrier in it. Yes, absolutely.
Rather than to each other.
Yeah, because that was a standard practice years ago. It came out with a thinner hardwood, wider. They said it's for condos and you glue it together. Before any click system came in, it was all tongue and groove. And you glued it together, special adhesives for that. But with experience,
comes wisdom.
Yes, you hope.
That's the way it's supposed to work.
So, we found that the gluing the boards together just made any future issues a real pain for everybody, okay? And if you were to do it in a condo, condos are difficult in Calgary because they get so dry and often they don't have a humidifier. We've done readings in condos that are 10%, 10, 12%, right? It's supposed to be at 30. So that floor, and it's floating and it's just breaking. It's terrible, because they can't keep, we tell everybody, keep your humidity up. Oh yes, we will. But then they go away for 6 months. Down south, and the house is empty, and it's just left to its own devices because the temperature's turned down, and then there's issues. So, in a condo, glue it down. There's a new pad now that's 100% waterproof that you just lay down on the floor. It's very dense, very heavy, but you can glue to that, and nothing's actually attached to the subfloor. It's very interesting. It's very new.
Yeah,
so,
this is a new application.
Yes.
Now, is this something that is also appropriate for the sound deadening qualities? Because when you install a floor
Yes.
in a condo,
Yes.
whether it's a concrete or a frame building, you need to typically have a sound deadening subfloor, or not subfloor, but
A pad.
a pad, yeah.
Yeah, lack of a better word, it's a pad.
Yeah.
And it's a good question. Every condo board has their own rules about what their number for the IIC and the SDC ratings are. IIC, I believe, is the sound transferring down to the unit below. The SDC is the sound in the unit there. So they have some numbers they want to achieve, and so you often need a pad under it. So that's where the double glue down is. Often you glue this pad down, then you glue the floor to the top. But now we just need the one pad. So you don't have to, right? So you can just put the pad down, glue to that. That has a high rating, sound rating.
That's great.
Yes. And so you only have the expense of the one glue, because it's expensive to glue the pad down and then glue the hardwood down.
Well, and it's been my experience in construction that the more complex you make something, the more layers of anything are involved, then there are different considerations, right? It's like when you mentioned earlier, you have like a specific product that you use to seal the cracks in the concrete, and it's made by the same manufacturer, and it's designed to be compliant or complementary to then the other coating that you add in beneath the hardwood on a concrete floor. So it's not just what you have to do, but it's how those pieces actually interface and interact with each other.
Plus, how is that space between one unit, the floor of one unit, ceiling of the other unit, how is that constructed? That has a huge bearing on how much sound is transferred down to it. So
that's a whole building science.
It's a whole building science, and I'm just concerned about what can we do on top of that subfloor to make the best sound transmission possible. So
yeah, or lack thereof. Yeah, thank you. There can be this reticence to using hardwood in wet areas. However, over the last decade or more, we are carrying hardwood throughout the kitchens and everywhere on the main floor, including sometimes the foyer of a home. So what is your response to that concern?
Well, I put it in my house, in the kitchen. Homes 50, 60, 70 years ago were quite compartmentalized, right? You had a separate kitchen from your dining room, from your living room, to your hallway, to your bedrooms. It was a lot easier to stop your hardwood at your kitchen, not do it, okay? Modern homes have open plans. And as soon as you cut one floor off and add another one, it kind of makes the one room maybe smaller, more tight. You just don't have that flow. Okay, so number one, I think it flows well with the rest of the flooring that's in there if it's hardwood. And number two, if you, like, I spilled half a gallon of milk. I dropped a half a gallon the other day on my hardwood, and my dog helped me lick it up. Well, I didn't lick it up. They helped me. I had a towel, but
I was getting quite the visual there, Paul.
I cleaned it up. Yeah, thanks. I cleaned it up and it was just fine. So, if you spill stuff, that's not going to hurt it. It's when you've got a fridge leak, if you've got ice coming in and water, those are two places that you could have a leak in it. So you have to make sure it's installed professionally. Okay. When we go to a job site, we can remove a fridge, get it out of the way. We'll always have a professional plumber in there to put it back in. Okay. Same with dishwasher. Dishwasher can leak. If your dishwasher's not leaking now, and you want new hardwood, maybe just leave it in and we'll do up to it, as opposed to remove it and put it back. Then you have a chance of it leaking. So most spills aren't going to hurt your floor. Like I said, it was half gallon of milk, and it's just fine. Yeah.
The other thing that we will often suggest to homeowners, well, we do it when we execute construction, is we will make sure that there is some overage left in the home.
Yes.
So when I say overage, I mean extra flooring material, of course, for our listeners, that will store indoors, very important, under the stairs typically is where everybody puts it. And what percentage of the square footage that you've installed would you recommend as a guideline to have for exactly those minor emergencies that could affect your floor, like a dishwasher leak or...
Right. Every manufacturer's box of flooring is going to be a different amount of square footage, but we recommend having 3 or 4 boxes left on a job site. So you're looking at maybe up to 100 square feet. You know, something over 1,000 square feet install.
Right. So about 10%.
About 10%. We use a 10% cutting allowance when we have a wide plank, because the wider the plank, the more waste is there when you chop off an end or have to cut off this, right? And so narrow floors, which is 5%, is plenty. But yeah, we figure about 10%, although if it's 2,000, 3,000 square feet, they don't need 300 square feet of extra material, right? They just need, for the small areas that could have some damage down the road.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and the other thing that I would add to that, as someone who is like both a GC and a designer, is that if people are contemplating doing maybe a second stage of their renovation later, and we are installing a new hardwood floor, then think about where else you might want that hardwood and purchase all the material once. Because now, unless you're doing something that is site finished in like 1.25 inches or 1.5 inches red oak, which you're not doing in a new construction project, you may not be able to get exactly that variation of hardwood species made by a specific manufacturer with a specific finish 5 years from now.
We run into that a lot, whether we installed the floor originally or not. People come in and they have a board and they'll go, can we match this? Because we can't find it. It's not been discontinued. And that can happen with any manufacturer in the pre-finished line. Site finished, most of the time we can get a similar product to match. Okay, but it's the pre-finished that are difficult. So yeah, if you're thinking about doing, especially if it's not going to be right away, if it's going to be the next year, not a huge deal. But if it's 5 years or more, you might want to get it just to guarantee it. Yeah, because we can't, or the manufacturer can't guarantee they'll have a matching product 5 years down the road.
Yeah, and I'm remembering specific clients that we've worked with over the years, and we've done everything from call every warehouse in North America that could possibly have some of this tucked away somewhere to ultimately having to decide to replace all the flooring. So
yeah, that's hard.
That's and it hard. Just feels like such a waste when you do it.
Yeah, that's hard for me. It hurts my heart a little bit to do that. It depends on, we test the moisture of the wood. Okay, what's the moisture? What should it be? What time of the year is it, right? Is it the middle of summer or is it the middle of winter? Because it's a lot more humid in the middle of summer than it is in the wintertime. Yeah. So you're kind of acclimating it to where it should be at the time, which the only thing you can do is bring it in ahead of time. And maybe it's a week, maybe it's a month. The wider you go, the more. And we're talking about solid hardwood floors now. Yeah. Engineered floors, most of the manufacturers do not want you to acclimate them. So you leave them in the box, you open it and use it.
Install it. Yeah. And then it acclimates together in the one site condition. Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, there's so much, right? Yeah. There's so much. If
hopefully
you're doing a site-finished floor, then you deliver the wood. Usually it's a couple of weeks ahead of time.
Well,
For raw
again,
hardwood, or we used to.
yeah.
Are you not doing that anymore?
Again, it's the time of year. Our warehouse here was made to house hardwood. So it's got fans. We're drying it out because it's coming from a place that has more humidity. Even though it's been kiln dried,
Everywhere has
more humidity, right? And so this warehouse is made to house hardwood and to dry it, get it more to where the conditions will normally be.
Mm-hmm. And that's something that has to happen gradually, right? Like,
well, it's kiln dried to a certain percent.
Yeah.
And then you put it in the warehouse and yeah, it'll do what it'll need to do. And the narrower the board, the less time you need to acclimate it in the house. Okay. If it's 1.5 inches or 2 1/4, we might bring it in on a Thursday, Friday, install it Monday, Tuesday. That's all you need for that.
But we're not doing those widths anymore.
No, you're doing wider boards. And so, yes, it's good to acclimate it. But if I've had it here for a few months, because there's some products that I want to have all the time because we use them all the time, there's not much to acclimate. No, unless someone has a pool, say, right, or a sauna that's bringing moisture into the areas, so the floor needs to pick up moisture, then we'll acclimate it for more. Okay, but not so much for the drying out if we've had it here. If it just came for the mill, yeah, we'll bring it in and leave it for longer. Just something that we get asked for quite a bit is, can we put our hardwood floors on top of a radiant heat?
Mm-hmm.
And it could be just a pad underneath, electric pad underneath. It could be built-in radiant in your basement and right in your concrete. Yes, you can, but not every hardwood floor will work over radiant heat. Floors that are very susceptible to movement, which would be hickory. Hickory is one that moves quite a bit. Again, if the humidity level stays constant, that floor will not move, even if you're on radiant heat. However, basements become tough. It seems to be drier down there than on their main level. Main level, you're cooking, you're cleaning, you're doing laundry, that sort of thing. So downstairs, we recommend going with an oak. Oaks are all warranted over it. We're red and white. And it would have no issue doing that. And some maples are okay. Mm-hmm. But if you want a guarantee, then you go with an oak floor. And they're all guaranteed to go directly over radiant heat. And that radiant heat will still come up through and heat the area and be nice. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Depending on, well, any heated floor, but a heated floor that has, glycol tubes or whatever, form of liquid
yes.
underneath it,
yes.
maybe shouldn't be a nail down floor, Paul.
Yeah. That's where
this wisdom experience thing.
Yes. Water and wood don't mix, of course. So if you're installing a hardwood floor and we'll see lines running, and it might be old ones running right under the subfloor, or there'll be new ones, and then they put a thin plywood over top. Easy for a nail to go through and hit a line. Sometimes it's just a little mist that comes out and you don't notice it for a few months, and then all of a sudden, why is my floor buckling? And and then it's a big deal to fix that. So normally if you do a full spread adhesive, again, a lot of times you could mark out where the lines are and just nail in between them if you have to nail.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the way to do that is to crank up the heat on the glycol floor, shoot it with an infrared camera so you can see where the lines are, and then work around them very carefully.
Yeah. Yeah, very carefully.
Very carefully.
Yeah, we've had it where the customer failed to mention that they had lines under the subfloor. Okay, the basement's developed. We have no idea. And we get done, everything's good. People are happy. A month later, what's happening in my hardwood here? And then it becomes a big deal.
Oh, it's a very big deal.
So, yes, if you have a line under there, please tell your hardwood installer so that they know to avoid it. Yes.
It's often in the poured concrete, so it's in the top layer of the concrete, or it can be laid in mats. I mean, it just depends on how it
there's
was
different
installed.
applications of it.
Yeah.
And I'm starting to see more of them on top of a wood subfloor, you made for, where the lines are going.
That just makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, because then you can access the lines. They're not in your...
They're not in the concrete, but often they'll have this system where the mat is actually wood and it has the lines already in it. So they put it down and it's kind of flush with the top of it, and then they'll put a plywood on top of that. Okay. And then the floor on top of that. But remember, folks, humidity is the most important thing in Calgary. So radiant heat is great, but you still need forced air to get some humidity in the house.
To move air.
To move air,
moisture.
to add moisture, because if you don't do that, your floors might fail. Because it wants that humidity, it wants that 30%. If it's left to its own devices and you just have radiant heat, you could be asking for issues down the road. And also, don't heat up your radiant too hot, because that can bake the floor and cause issues as well. So most of them have limiters on them, governors, to keep them from getting too hot.
Yeah,
but
there's a lot
careful.
to think about.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
because that is essentially part of your HVAC system, but it's not a substitute for your entire HVAC system. So you need something that is going to move air.
You do. It's important.
And add humidity back into the home.
It's very important. Yes.
Yeah. And I will say this very respectfully, certainly not everyone that you would speak to that calls themselves a flooring expert would factor all those things in the way you would.
Well, they don't have the experience.
Yeah.
And we're fortunate. We've been doing this all my life, and our guys have been here a long time, and a lot of what we've learned is from experience. And you don't have that experience. It's hard to know. But if you remember one thing, humidity is king in Calgary. 30% year-round, the floor cannot move. You can have a solid floor this wide, if it's acclimated, and you have constant humidity, it cannot move, period.
You heard it here, folks.
Yeah.
If you enjoyed today, or you have a friend who you think could benefit, please forward this and hit the like button below, because if I don't mention that, Britt is going to be mad at me. Thank you, and take care.
Thank you.